The Republican Zone is brought to you by Drew Murray, a modern view from the Republican lens, covering local and national news, understanding that one size doesn't fit all when it comes to politics. The Republican Zone airs Wednesday from 1 to 2 p.m. and Saturday from 3 to 4 p.m.
You were listening to Usula Radio. Oh, too soon. I am Drew Murray, and I am the host of the Republican Zone. So, I have a lot to talk about today. In less than 2 weeks, we will have an election here in Philadelphia, November 5th. So mark that date on your calendar. Make sure you get out and vote. It is imperative for everyone to vote. If you really want your voice to be heard, then you need to vote. And in fact, this election there will be new voting machines. So make sure. You might have to leave a little bit more time because these are new automated machines that the city has been doing a very good job of getting out to the public to educate voters on how the machines work. I know there's been at least 2 in my neighborhood where you could go and you could test out the machines and actually use the machines as a test vote. But there will be many people who are seeing this for the first time. So leave a little bit more time if when you go to vote because the lines might be a little longer. This is also a general election. This is a big election, so lines will probably be a little longer than they were in May. So no guest today. We're going to talk about the election. Next week I will have a guest. I will have Michael Meehan, who is the head of the Republican City Committee. He'll join me to talk about. We'll talk about mostly the races that involve Republicans. The mayor, Billy Ciancaglini, is running against Mayor Kenney. There's actually 4 district seats, Duke Orsino in 1, Michael Bradley in District 2, Pete Smith in District 6, and then the incumbent Brian O'Neill in District 10 are the Republicans running for the district races. And we'll get into each of those races a little bit today. And then probably the bigger race will be the 5 Republicans running for at-large, that for seats that at least traditionally have gone to Republicans, two at-large seats that have gone to Republicans. So we'll talk about that next week with Mike. But I find in talking to people about the race, and I did run in the primary and unfortunately lost, a lot of people don't even know how city council works. And the city council race is going to be the big races. A lot of, and there are many other elections going on, but a lot of them are non-contested, so they will automatically get through. The Democrat who is elected in the primary will automatically get through Register of Wills, sheriff, etc. So the big race, there is the mayor race. Billy Ciancaglini is running against Mayor Kenney. In a city like Philadelphia, it is extremely challenging to win a race like that. Billy Ciancaglini is trying his best, but it's a steep hill to climb. So more than likely that election will go to Mayor Kenney unless quite honestly, unless there's some kind of miracle or something happens. It would be the biggest upset in the city of Philadelphia history. Billy's working hard, but it is probably an impossible battle to beat Mayor Kenney in this election. So I think a lot of people are going to be looking at the at-large race and the district races, the city council races. So for those of you who don't know, the city of Philadelphia is governed by city council, and there are 17 seats on city council. There are 10 districts and then 7 at-large seats. So there are 10 districts in the city of Philadelphia. We are currently sitting, this radio station, I should say, sits in District 7, which is represented by Maria Quinones Sanchez. I live in District 5, which is governed by Council President Darrell Clark. So there are 10 areas of Philadelphia, and those 10 seats go to mostly Democrats traditionally. One seat has, for the past 40 years, gone to a Republican, Brian O'Neill, in District 10, which is as far up in the Northeast as you can go. So, and then 7 at-large seats. 5 traditionally go to Democrats, 2 traditionally go to Republicans. So there are 10 district races. Some of these are non-contested, so it's not really a race, but there are a few that are contested, and 4 have Republicans. District 1 will be Duke Orsino, who's been on my show before. He's running against Mark Squilla, who's the incumbent. Michael Bradley in District 2 is a Republican running against Kenyatta Johnson, who is also an incumbent. Jamie Gauthier is running in District 3. She is unopposed. Jamie is the former executive director of the Fairmount Park Conservancy. She won in the primary. She is a newcomer. She is not an incumbent. She's one of the few that are not incumbents. Curtis Jones in District 4 is running against Matt Bolser, who's a libertarian, and a person, Carla Krull, who is an independent. Darrell Clark in District 5 is unopposed. Pete Smith, a Republican, who's been on my show, is running against Bobby Heenan, who is currently under indictment. So people are watching that race very closely. Bobby Heenan, some people did call for him to step down. I didn't think he needed to step down. You are innocent until proven guilty in this country. So I didn't think Bobby should have been forced to step down. Although some people did call for him to do so. Marie Quinones Sanchez, as we detailed, she's District 7, running unopposed. Cindy Bass is being challenged by Greg Pommier, who is an independent. Cheryl Parker in District 9 is running unopposed. And then Brian O'Neill, that we talked about, a Republican who has been the leader of District 10 for 40 years, is running against Judy Moore, who is 40 years old. So literally, Councilman Brian O'Neill has been in office since Judy Moore was born. A long time. I believe he's the longest tenured council person on city council. So those are the 10 district races. It is very hard to beat a Democrat in one of those races. It is very difficult to beat an incumbent. So it'll be interesting to see. But again, it's an uphill battle. Duke, Michael, Pete, they're the two challengers, the three challengers going after incumbent seats. I wish them well, but I think they know they're the underdog, and they're going to do their best, but it is extremely challenging to beat an incumbent in the city, especially when you're not a Democrat. So we'll see how those races go. A lot of the people are looking at, probably what people are looking most closely at in this election is the council at large positions, and there are 7. And again, traditionally, 5 go to Democrats and 2 go to Republicans. So the 5 Democrats who win or who won in the primary are pretty much guaranteed to go through, and that's those 5 are Helen Gim, Alan Dom, Catherine Gilmore Richardson, Isaiah Thomas, and Derek Green. So they are almost assured at getting through. Basically guaranteed. Helen Gim and Alan Dom are incumbents, as is Derek Green. And then Isaiah Thomas and Catherine Gilmore Richardson are newcomers who won in the primary. Again, basically assured to get through the general election. So then you have 5 Republicans who are running. Those 5 are Dan Tinney, who's a ward leader in Northeast Philadelphia, Matt Wolf, a Republican ward leader in West Philadelphia, Bill Heaney, a ward leader in Northeast Philadelphia, David O., the incumbent, who is a ward leader in West Philadelphia, and then Al Taubenberger, who is also an incumbent. And then you have a number of third party or independents, and I had to look these up. It is not necessarily you don't hear about necessarily the third party or the independent candidates too much, although some have been doing a good job of getting a lot of press. And I apologize if I mispronounce any of these names. Maj Toure, who's from the Libertarian Party. Sherry Cohen, who is from a Better Council Party. Sherry actually ran as a Democrat in the primary, but dropped out of the race and had to go to court in order to be placed on this ballot as a what we'll call a third-party candidate. Joe Cox, who is running as an independent. Joe's actually gotten a lot of press and is truly an independent. I've gotten to know Joe over the last year during my campaign. He's a good guy. I'd say we probably don't agree on anything politically, but he's a good man. He organizes something called the PMA Bike Ride, where he delivers pizza to homeless people. So he does a lot of good for this community, for this city. Clark King, who is also an independent. Steve Cherniavsky, who's with the Term Limits Philadelphia Party, and then 2 Working Family Party candidates who have gotten a lot of press over the last few months, Kendra Brooks and Nicholas O'Rourke, whom I have never met, but they have both raised a significant amount of money. I believe Kendra is in the $150,000 range as of the last reporting, and Nicholas is in the 80 to 85 range. Last reporting again. I think the most recent reports, financial reports, are due to the city, I think this week. So we'll see how much money they've raised in total. But that number, I will tell you, the 150,000 and 85,000 is an incredible number. When you're not a Democrat, it is incredibly challenging to raise money. I only raised, and this is public information, I raised about 50,000 for my primary, and it was extremely hard. That was working day and night, calling people, getting people on my website, doing fundraisers, and I'd only raised around 50,000. And when I say only, I'm just doing that in comparison to what Kendra Brooks and Nicholas O'Rourke has done. It's actually very, very impressive. So we'll see. We'll see if they can knock off what is traditionally the 2 Republican seats, and I think it's going to be very difficult. I would be amazed if 2 Republicans do not take those 2 what I'll call final seats. And people always ask me why. And in fact, when I ran, I consider myself an independent thinker. I used to be a Democrat. I became a Republican. Because I'm an independent thinker, a lot of people said, well, Drew, why don't you just become an independent? And the reason I didn't become an independent is because I feel like I am a Republican, number one. But in the back of my mind, it would be extremely challenging, if not impossible, to win as an independent for one of those city council at large seats. And people ask why. And it's not that hard to figure out. In Philadelphia, there are 66 wards. And within those wards, there are 11 to 51 divisions. And the divisions are the polling stations. That's where you actually go to vote. Some of those divisions can be combined into a building. In some areas, if it's a large building, you could have 4 polling stations. But typically, there's only one entrance to the building. And outside of those entrances, you'll often see there will be people. There will be committee people. They're the kind of the ground soldiers for the party, for the wards. So especially for the Democrats, you will see 1 or 2 people at every one of those polling stations, and each one of those wards will endorse certain candidates. So, for example, if a Republican ward endorses 2 candidates, there will be 1 or 2 people standing outside a polling station and handing you a ballot, telling you or recommending to you who to vote for. So there are a total of 1,692 polling stations in the city of Philadelphia. So in order to get 1 or 2 people at each one of those polling stations, you need an infrastructure. And the Democratic Party absolutely has it. They have 2 people at every station that I've ever visited, and I visit a lot during my campaign. And the Republicans have people at most of those stations. So that is, and we'll go into this a little bit after the break, on why it is so difficult for an independent or third party to get people out to those stations and why it is so hard for them to win an election. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in a minute.
Being prepared is a part of who you are, but it's especially important in the case of a disaster. Be informed about possible emergencies in your area. Make a plan that covers where you'll go in an emergency. Build a kit with the things you need to survive. There's no one more capable of planning for your situation than you. Start your plan today. Go to ready.gov/myplan.
Sometimes the things we do or say can make others feel hurt, excluded, or isolated. Everything you say and do creates an impact.
How am I supposed to save the whole world?
You can't think about saving the world. You have to think about saving one person.
Because of you, someone's entire life can change. You don't have to be a superhero to have a positive impact.
Friends?
Friends.
Welcome back. You were listening to USLA Radio. I am Drew Murray. I am the host of the Republican Zone. So we are talking about the November 5th election, and we just started to kind of get into, the infrastructure and what happens the day of elections, and you really don't necessarily know exactly what goes on unless you're someone who is very involved, someone who ran a campaign, or maybe you're a ward leader, or maybe you are a committee person, or just someone who votes every election like I do and knows who the committee people are. But so there are 1,692 polling stations. The Democrats will mostly, and almost all of them, if not all of them, have at least one person, normally two people, and they will be handing out ballots saying, okay, this is who our ward endorsed. This is who our ward recommends. And the Republicans will be similar. They will have almost every polling station covered. Sometimes they'll only have one person. In the Northeast, where it's a huge concentration of Republicans, they'll have two. But in Center City, they might not have one, or they might only have one person. But that is when it comes down to elections, that is a very big deal, because I will tell you, as someone who did run a campaign, who went out every day and every night while I had a full-time job, so it was more at night. But, I went to meetings. I went to numerous meetings a night. Normally it was about three events a night is where you would go and you would speak and talk to potential voters. Over the weekend, you might have some events. And most of these events, because the city of Philadelphia is mostly Democrats, happen before the primary. There aren't as many events after the primary for Republicans, because those 5 spots in the at-large races are pretty much already guaranteed. So, but no matter how hard you work, how many doors you knock, how many flyers you send out and mailers you send out, it is hard to get to every voter. And having those committee people handing out ballots for people they endorsed is huge. And there are many people who don't necessarily know who they're voting for until that day. And another thing the Democrats do very well is they typically get those ballots in people's doors, at least in my neighborhood, a few days before. So they'll have a list of everyone that they are endorsing a few days before. So that is huge. And that is why it is so challenging for independents and third-party candidates to win. And, even though the Republican Party is small compared to the Democratic Party, I think there's an 8-to-1 ratio here in Philadelphia, it is still a large party nationally, and there are still a lot of people out there working and getting out the vote, as they call it, for Republicans. All 66 wards, or I think 65 out of 66 wards currently, are filled with a ward leader in the city of Philadelphia, and all of those wards have committee people. Not necessary. You can have 2 committee people per division. Most divisions in the Republican wards are filled with at least one person. So not having that infrastructure as an independent or a third-party candidate makes it extremely challenging. So the only way to overcome that, in my opinion, is you need to get a lot of money. So my opinion is the third-party candidates, the independent candidates, if they don't have money, they probably, unfortunately, don't stand much of a chance. And it's unfortunate. When I say unfortunate, it's unfortunate because it takes money in order to do that. And when I say it takes money, it's the reason for that is, again, it's getting out the vote. Getting out the vote costs a lot of money. Every time you walk up to a polling station, you see lawn signs. Each one of those lawn signs costs about $5. And if you have 1,692 polling stations, and you just have one at each one of those polling stations, you're talking $6,000, upwards of $6,000-7,000. In most places you go to, the people will have numerous signs. So, and you also need to get people out there handing out ballots. Those ballots cost money to print. And the biggest thing is you want to get as many people as possible at those 1,692 polling stations handing out either a ballot with your name on it or what's called a bullet vote piece, which just basically has your name. So, for example, when I was out there at the polling stations driving around during the primary, I had, it was a bullet, little, 5x3 card that said my name and my number. And so you need people to do that. And if you don't have that, if you don't have the money to do that, it's extremely challenging. So can anyone do it? Unfortunately, I don't think any of the independents are going to make it. I don't think any of the third party, with the exception of one of the third parties, the working family parties, Kendra Brooks and Nicholas O'Rourke, have much of a chance. And again, I could be wrong, and I wish everyone luck. I never tell people who to vote for. That is up to them. I will say though, there's something a little different about this election, and I think it is worth talking about. And the Working Family Party, and I've read into Kendra Brooks. I've read into a little bit of Nicholas O'Rourke, and the bottom line is, in my opinion, they are Democrats. And that frustrates me that they are Democrats running under the banner of the Working Families Party. And the reason for that is, as we've discussed already, currently in City Council, there are 17 total City Council people. Right now, 9 out of the 10 districts are run by Democrats, and right now, 5 out of the 7 at-large positions are held by Democrats, which means out of the 17 City Council members, 14 are Democrats. And hey, and anybody has the right to go run, especially in the districts. But the issue I have with the Working Family Party running in this election is I just think they're Democrats trying to get those 2 other spots. And I think that's wrong. And this is not just conjecture on my part. I know Kendra Brooks sent out letters to all those committee people. We talked about that infrastructure. And so how does a third party candidate do it? They need to tap into that infrastructure. And I know Kendra Brooks sent out letters to all the committee people stating that I am a lifelong Democrat and you should endorse me on your ballot. So if Kendra Brooks and Nicholas O'Rourke, who I've never met, so this is my opinion, if they were truly independent thinkers, if they were truly thinkers outside of the Democratic Party, I'd be 100% fine with their running. But if they're really Democrats who are just trying to, in my opinion, steal one of those 2 spots that are meant for the minority party or minority parties, as could be the case, that's completely wrong. And the fact that they are tapping into that infrastructure of the Democratic Party is proof, in my opinion, that that's really what they're trying to do. It's just Democrats trying to take, 2 of those city council at large positions. And to me, it's, the question I asked, and I asked it on Facebook, but, how much is not enough? I mean, if you have 14 out of the 17 seats, you are in essence, and your mayor is a Democrat, you are running the city of Philadelphia. Why do you have to go after those other 2 spots? There's a reason that legislation reserves 2 of those city council at large seats, and it's to at least have some level of diversity from a political standpoint. And if the Working Families Party is successful and those 2 get in, there's basically going to be 7 Democrats who are filling that at-large position. And I think that, that is not good for the city of Philadelphia. Whether you're a Democrat, whether you're a Republican, whether you're an independent, whether you're a third-party candidate, the reason we want those 2 positions filled by non-Democrats is to have a level of diversity and opinion on city council. So when they're going to go ahead and they're just going to have 7 at-large Democrats, basically, that's going to take away from that diversity of ideas. It's going to take away from debate. There's already very little debate in city council in many ways because there are so many Democrats, which is fine. That's the way the cookie crumbles, and that's how the voters have decided in the city of Philadelphia so far, and that's what they decided in the last election. And the voters have spoken. But when you have two people who are just basically Democrats coming in, that is going to hurt the city of Philadelphia. That's going to hurt debate. And I told, when people ask me when I talk about this, well, why do you think this? Why do you think they're not independent thinkers? Number one was the fact that letter was sent where Kendra described herself as a lifelong Democrat running for one of the two city council at-large positions, trying to tap into the infrastructure of the Democratic Party. And just so you know, I guess I should give a little bit of background on when you vote for those at-large positions. There are 7 positions, but you can only vote for 5. I actually kind of disagree with that. I think you should, if there are 7 positions, I think you should be able to vote for 7 people, but that's a debate for a different day. But you can only vote for 5. So if you are a Democrat and you are going to vote for the Working Families Party candidates, then you have to take 2 of your votes and not vote for Democrats. So, I know Bob Brady, the head of the Democratic City Committee, has come out and said, this is not something I want. We want our people, we want people who are registered Democrats, we want them to vote for our 5 candidates. And so not everyone in the Democratic Party, though, agrees. And my friend, and she is my friend and neighbor, Councilwoman Kim, has already come out and endorsed both. And if she's quoted correctly, it's we need to get the party of Trump out of city council. I'm paraphrasing a bit. But, I disagree with my friend Helen. I don't think we need to get the party of Trump. Number one, the Republican Party is not the party of Trump. He's only been a Republican for the past, 8 years, and he's only been president for the past 3 years. So I don't define the Republican Party as the party of Trump. And I think Councilman Owen, Councilman Taubenberger, and Councilman Brian O'Neill have contributed significantly to the city council process. And I think those diverse opinions are needed to go forward. And Councilwoman Kim is not the only Democrat who has endorsed the Working Families Party candidates. I'm just going to read them here. Senator Elizabeth Warren, presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren, has endorsed them. Again, Helen Kim, Representative Chris Robb, Representative Elizabeth Fiedler, Representative Malcolm Kenyatta, State Senator Art Haywood, State Representative Movita Johnson-Harrell, and State Representative Brian Sims, who is the state rep in the 182nd, where I actually live. So these are Democrats who are endorsing these 2 candidates, in my opinion, purely because they want more Democratic Party voices on city council. So I urge you to really think about that when you have your 5 votes on November 5th and you go to pick those 5 candidates. And again, I will never tell people how to vote. There's a reason that voting booths have a curtain on them. Think about whether or not you want 7 Democrats on the city council at large seats. So we'll get a little bit more into to the election, maybe talk about State Representative Brian Sims when we come back from this quick break.
Our hearts are made stronger by how we treat others.
Put her there.
The light you share can impact those around you, but so can the darkness.
Later, twerps.
Did Pete saying mean things bother you?
So when you reach out to another person, take a moment to consider how they will feel and let your heart be the key to making a difference. Because of you, someone's entire day, year, or even life can change.
In every heart, there's hope.
$150 over $90.
$180 over $111.
$160 over $110. I had a stroke.
This is what high blood pressure looks like. You might not feel its symptoms, but the results from a stroke are far from invisible or silent. If you've come off your treatment plan, get back on it, or talk with your doctor to create an exercise, diet, and medication plan that works for you. Go to loweryourhbp.org.
If I would have followed a treatment plan, I would not be in this situation.
Welcome back. You are listening to Usula Radio. I am Drew Murray, and you are listening to the Republican Zone. So we have spent pretty much the whole time on the November 5th election. And the reason I spent so much time on it is because it is so important. And again, I urge you all to go out and vote. Whatever district you live in, if you do have a race that is being challenged, go deep and research those candidates and decide, who is best for you. Look into the 7 at-large available positions and see who you think works best for you, who will work best for you, and who's most in line with your beliefs. Again, I believe in debate. I believe in diversity of opinion, and that's why I firmly believe that the Working Families Party, if they take 2 of those positions, that will be a bad decision for the city of Philadelphia. As a Republican, of course, I'm partial to the Republicans, but look into Joe Cox, look into Maj Toure from the Libertarian Party, see what they have to say. But if you believe, like I do, that we need debate on city council and that we need diverse opinions, then really look into and think about whether or not you want Kendra Brooks or Nicholas O'Rourke, who I've never met, and I'm sure they're great people. I know they're community activists. I know they're civically engaged, just like me. So this is nothing personally against them. It's just I believe we need this diversity of opinion, and I think the evidence shows that they are really just Democrats trying to go after those positions. And as I said, all the Democrats in the city of Philadelphia who are, and including outside of Philadelphia, a presidential candidate is endorsing the Working Family Party candidates because they are Democrats. And one of which is State Representative Brian Sims, who is the state representative of the 182nd, which is where I live in Center City. And I very likely have not made an official announcement yet. And I know Brian. Brian's a good guy. I get along with Brian. We probably disagree on most things politically, but I've always gotten along very well with State Rep Brian Sims. But there's a very good chance that I will be running against State Representative Brian Sims in the near future. This time next year will be the general election where that I will probably be running for, presumably, or most likely, or more likely, against Brian Sims. Obviously, that will depend on my getting past the primary and Brian Sims getting past the primary. And we'll see. Once November 5th is biased, that's kind of when the next election cycle is really going to ramp up. And starting on January 1, that's when you're really going to see the election cycle on all levels, both local, state, and obviously federal, because we have obviously a huge election coming November of 2020 in our presidential election. So remember, go out, vote November 5th. This is a big election for the city of Philadelphia. All elections are big for the city of Philadelphia. The city of Philadelphia in many ways is actually doing well. I live in Center City. I see a ton of development. As a Republican, as a business person, I want to see that development, because development means we're bringing jobs to the city through businesses. If, for example, if Chubb does have their headquarters in Center City at 2000 Arch, that's going to bring a lot of new jobs to the city of Philadelphia. When we're building that building, it's bringing a lot of trades jobs to the city of Philadelphia. So I love to see those. I'd love to see development in Center City. I'd love to see it all around the city. And I think we are improving in that aspect. I think Center City, for the most part, is also very safe. I live in Logan Square, and it's a very safe community. But Philadelphia, in one way, is going backwards, in my opinion. And Mayor Kenney had a quote after this past weekend. We had a tough weekend here in Philadelphia. There were 2 babies who were murdered, and it's horrible. And Mayor Kenny, who I like Mayor Kenny. I think he's a good person. He's a St. Joe's Prep grad, so all of us who attended the prep, I feel like we all know each other almost. And I do know Mayor Kenny. I think at heart he's a good person. I disagree with a lot of what he's done as mayor, but he had this quote, and I'm just going to read it verbatim. You feel like we're making progress in the city, and then this weekend happens, Kenny said. You feel like you're just losing ground. And that was a quote directly from Mayor Kenny after what came out about those two babies being murdered. And that is how we're going backwards. And the city of Philadelphia, as the rest of the country, when violence and homicides are decreasing, the city of Philadelphia is one of the only large cities where homicides are increasing. And you look at and you think about why are these things happening? And it's opinion. And in my opinion, when I look at things like, wow, the economy of Philadelphia, economy all over the country is getting better. Unemployment is decreasing, although the city of Philadelphia is still one of the poorest big cities. In fact, we are the poorest big city in the country with a poverty rate of 25%. But it's decreasing. It is, even though we're not there yet. We're nowhere near where we should be. But if poverty is decreasing, if communities theoretically you would think would be becoming safer, but that's not happening. The city of Philadelphia, Center City again is still a pretty safe place, but there are a lot of communities not in Center City that have seen gun violence and homicides increase dramatically. In fact, since Larry Krasner took office, and those of you who listen to me a lot probably know where this was going. Since Larry Krasner has taken office, the city of Philadelphia has seen a 12% increase in homicides. And currently the date today is October 23rd, 2019. We have already seen more homicides in 2019 than we did in 2018. We saw more homicides in 2019 at this date, October 23rd, than we did in all of 2017. So, to me, you look at all the variables and what is the biggest reason that we can look at. And in my opinion, it is Larry Krasner. So we've talked about a lot of cases that Larry Krasner has been involved in, and we're going to go over them a little more, and we're going to talk about, the Michael White verdict and the killing of Sean Skellinger, which was a tragic incident in Center City at, I believe it was at 17th and Chancellor, where there was an argument. Sean Skellinger was in a car. Michael White was delivering on his bicycle, and the two got into an altercation. And the verdict just came out. Michael White was found not guilty of manslaughter. Now, I was not there at 17th and Chancellor. I was not in the courtroom, so I don't know if it was the right verdict or not. I think, in fact, I feel like I have a very diverse group of friends, both when I talk and when you hear this news and you're on Facebook, you see, everyone's opinions flew as soon as that verdict was announced. I saw people on both sides saying it was the right decision, that it was self-defense, that Michael White feared for his life, and then I saw on the other side people saying that Sean Skellinger was murdered. He pulled out a knife and he killed him. And again, I wasn't there. I wasn't at the incident at 17th and Chancellor, and I was not in the courtroom. But I will look. What we can look at is, how did Larry Krasner handle this case? And right off the bat, he charged Michael White originally with first-degree murder. And I'll be honest with you, when I heard that, I was surprised. I said, it didn't sound like first-degree murder to me. How can it be premeditated? They had never met before, and I'm not an attorney, but it didn't sound like premeditated murder to me. It was downgraded eventually to third-degree murder. And third-degree murder is punishable in the state of Pennsylvania 10 to 20 years. And third-degree murder is killing someone without premeditation or without intention, so long as it is not done while committing a felony. So in other words, if you're not committing a crime, then and you murder someone and it's not premeditated, that is third-degree murder. That sounds like, what was probably the appropriate charge, in my opinion. for Michael White. It was not premeditated. There was no other crime being committed. He wasn't robbing someone and ended up killing that person in the robbery. It was an incident where these two gentlemen met on the street, had a confrontation, and unfortunately one person was killed. Now what happened was, so first was first-degree murder, and then it was downgraded to third-degree murder, which I think was, in fact, I know it was the right decision based on everything I've heard. The night before the trial was to begin, Larry Krasner downgraded again to manslaughter, which if third-degree murder is 20 to 40 years, manslaughter is 10 to 20 years. And what manslaughter is, it's the crime of killing a human being without malice, afterthought, or otherwise in circumstances not accounting to murder. Another way I've heard it explained in reading a lot of these articles about this case, it's conscious disregard for human life. So the original, the way the district attorney's office was originally going to handle the case was it's going to be third-degree murder or manslaughter, and the jury should have been able to make that decision. But by downgrading again to manslaughter, to me, it created a circus of this trial. And again, I'm not saying whether Michael White deserved to be convicted or not, because I wasn't there. But the way Larry Krasner handled this case was it created a circus-like atmosphere, and it almost, I knew what the verdict was going to be because I just felt that was the way it was going to go. And again, I'm not an attorney. Stu Bykowski actually wrote something on. He's got a blog on Facebook. And I read what he read. And again, I'm not an attorney, but what he wrote was third-degree murder has a relatively low bar with no specific intent to kill being required for conviction. Voluntary manslaughter, on the other hand, is usually considered a heat of passion crime, with the self-defense being a reliable defense. And in Stu Bykowski's opinion, Krasner surely knew that White's excellent legal team was going to use self-defense tactics. So in other words, it was easier for the defense team to claim self-defense with the charge of manslaughter than third-degree murder. So it's almost like Larry Krasner gifted this to the defense. It seems like this is a pattern for Larry Krasner. He doesn't look out for the victims. He is... He's a former public defender. It seems like as the district attorney, he is still being a public defender. And also part of Stu Bykowski's, blog, he quoted Chuck Bruto, said and this is what Chuck Bruto said. He said he didn't want to see Michael White convicted of third-degree murder, the more likely outcome. We got to look at whether or not Larry Krasner is looking out for criminals or if he's looking out for victims. And in my opinion, without a doubt, what he has proven time and time again, and we'll talk about a couple more instances where he's done this, he's absolutely looked out for criminals more than the victims of the crime. And as we talk about elections in 2021, that is when you're going to have an opportunity to vote for whomever is against Larry Krasner, and I urge you to do that. We have a couple more years, so we're going to take another quick break, and then we'll be back for our final segment.
Don't wait. Communicate. Make your emergency plan today.
All right, welcome back. You are listening to Usula Radio. I am Drew Murray, the host of the Republican Zone. So we left off the last segment talking about one of my not favorite people, but one of my most talked about subjects, Larry Krasner. So as I quoted Mayor Kenney in the beginning of the last segment when I started talking about Larry Krasner. I had written something, and I'm just going to read it very quickly. It's not long. I'd written something on Facebook about this a few days ago after I read Mayor Kenney's quote, and this is what I said. I agree with Mayor Kenney 100%, and that's in regard to his quote saying that we're losing ground. We are losing ground. When Larry Krasner campaigned, he told us exactly what he was going to do. He was going to vilify police officers, and criminals would not be held to the same level of culpability as they had been in the past. I'm not a fan of Krasner, but he is doing exactly what he said he would do. As the saying goes, we got what we paid for. As I've said in the past, I'm absolutely for criminal justice reform. Minor offenses should not receive major sentences. Parole needs to be handled in a manner where people who earn a second chance receive one. I even applaud Krasner for exonerating those who were falsely imprisoned. I believe there were 10 people who were falsely imprisoned. He exonerated them, so I will give credit to where credit is due. However, what Krasner is doing goes well beyond criminal justice reform. He turned the Michael White case into a circus by lessening the charges numerous times, the last time being the night before the trial began. In true Krasner fashion, he did so without notifying the victim's family. As a result, Michael White was declared not guilty of all serious charges. I do not believe Michael White should have been charged with first-degree murder. Third-degree murder or even manslaughter was the correct charge. However, by continuously downgrading the charges, Krasner created a scenario where the jury was more likely to arrive at a not guilty verdict. Maureen Faulkner, so we're going to change the subject a little bit. Maureen Faulkner deserves closure. Larry Krasner promised to fight the appeal of Mumia Abdul-Jamal. He did not. He stepped aside and is allowing Mumia to move forward with an appeal. Mumia executed Daniel Faulkner, and Krasner has now enabled him to continue his appeal. Maureen and the entire Faulkner family deserve better. When Krasner negotiated a plea deal with Javon Patterson for the shooting of Mike Poang, he did not even consult with Poang, whose injuries will affect the rest of his life. Is anybody surprised that murder is up 12% since Krasner has taken office? As of today, Philadelphia has already surpassed the number of homicides in both 2018 and 2018. I call this the Krasner effect. It took a little bit over a year for Krasner's leniency to really take full effect, but we are absolutely witnessing this today. That is why homicides are going up. And as I stated, what just broke my heart, on Monday when I learned that 2 babies were murdered over the weekend. So, I think we all need to hold Larry Krasner his feet to the fire. He needs to stop this leniency with violent crime. He is emboldening criminals. We witnessed that when 6 police officers were shot at, a few months ago. These criminals, these violent criminals, they're not afraid of going to jail because at least the feeling that they have is that Larry Krasner is not going to hold their feet to the fire. He's not going to prosecute them in a manner that he should. He's not going to prosecute them as a prosecutor. He's prosecuting these people as a public defender. And that is something, and I call it the Krasner effect. And that's why, it took about a year for it truly to take effect. But when you are lenient on violent crime, and again, I'm 100% for criminal justice reform. If you do a minor offense, a nonviolent offense, you should not get major sentences. You should not be put in jail. I think we need to look at the problem of mass incarceration. But that does not apply to people who commit violent crimes. That does not apply to people who murder. And that is something that Larry Krasner, he's I say he's jumped the shark. He's not prosecuting people, these criminals, the way he should. And again, when you have the opportunity in 2021, please consider, what Krasner has done and the fact, as Mayor Kenney himself said, we're going in the wrong direction and we're losing ground. So please consider that in 2021. So, when I'm going to kind of leave we talked enough about Larry Krasner. Probably over the last few weeks, it seems like that's something we're always talking about. But it's because Larry Krasner does something, it seems, every week that makes me want to talk about him again. But when I'm going to do a show, especially when I don't have a guest, I normally, I read the paper every morning, but I look in the paper, I look on Facebook, and I see what are people talking about. So this last, let's say 7 or 8 minutes, we'll just talk about a whole bunch. We're going to jump around a lot too, because these are just things, both locally, some nationally, some on the state level. It's what I hear people talking about. What I read in the paper, and what I see people talking about on Facebook. One of the things that I found very interesting, and it was a bill, I believe, that was introduced by Mark Squilla, was a plastic bag ban in the city of Philadelphia. So we're really moving around here. We went from Larry Krasner to a plastic bag ban. And I am 100% for the plastic bag ban. So the way the legislation was written was a ban of plastic bags and then a 15-cent fee on a paper bag, something that is recyclable. I'm 100% for it for 2 reasons. I believe in climate change. I know people, I don't know why climate change has ever become political. I think we all should be looking out for the only planet we have. And even if you are a climate change denier, no matter what, we should want to look out for our environment. So it's always something that I've never really understood why it became political. But plastic bags are absolutely bad for our environment, and it also creates a ton of litter. There's not a street you walk down in the city of Philadelphia that there's not a plastic bag hanging from a tree limb. So I'm 100% in favor of it, and it did get voted through committee this morning, but it sounds like the 15-cent fee for the paper bag did not make it. So it's a compromise, and I'm fine with that. If plastic bags are banned, but we didn't get the 15-cent fee for paper, that's what compromises are all about. So I think that's a good thing it got through committee. The next step will be a full vote on city council, and I hope it goes through. I'm not normally a big fan of legislating businesses, and that's kind of what this is doing. But I don't think this is a huge burden on businesses. In fact, it's just going to force people and hey, I'm to blame. Sometimes you walk to the store, just bring your own bag, and I don't do it all the time. But maybe this will, if I don't get to take a plastic bag, I'm going to have to remember to bring bags more often. So I think it's a good thing. Another interesting thing that I actually just read about today, and it goes to the voting reforms. A deal was reached between Governor Wolf and the GOP in the state of Pennsylvania for new voting reforms. And there's a few things. I'm going to read them because I just grabbed this from the paper before I came. So the changes include allowing any voter to request an absentee ballot and vote by mail without providing a reason, as they currently must. So the thought there is more people will vote because they'll be able to get a absentee ballot without providing reason. It creates a permanent mail-in voter list. Again, increases the probability that people will vote. It reduces the voter registration deadline from 30 to 15 days before an election, again, making it easier for people to vote. Extends the tight absentee ballot deadlines that currently ensnare thousands of voters every year. It increases. There's funding for $90 million in statewide upgrade to more secure voting. We're starting to see that in Philadelphia with the new election machines that are now a computer screen instead of a mechanical button, but will have a paper ballot backup, so those votes can be confirmed. And then this was the really interesting one to me. It's going to eliminate the single button push to be able to vote for everyone in a specific party. Back in the day, used to call it pull the lever. And my mother, who, God rest her soul, she was a pull the lever Democrat. I don't think she ever voted for a Republican in her life. I'm not even sure if she was still alive, if she'd be able to vote for me as a Republican. I'm sure she would have. But it was really interesting to me. And when I first read it, a lot of these things you can say, you can look, and these were compromises. So this was bipartisan, all of these initiatives. And as you read it, you can kind of tell, like, oh, the Democrats probably wanted that, and then the Republicans probably wanted that. This was one I was interested. Interesting. I didn't know who would have pushed for it, but it sounds like this was a Republican initiative to get rid of the ability to either pull the lever, as the saying used to go, or push one button to vote for one person from a specific party. I agree with every one of these initiatives, including the taking away of pushing one button, because I'm a believer in you should not just go in and vote for people, not party. Vote for a person, not a party. There are good people on both sides. There are good Democrats. There are good Republicans. There are good independents. There are good working family party people. And you should look at each person and decide whether or not they are the person who would best fill the position. And if you just go in and you just push a button, and that's what you just do every time. And I loved my mother, but I actually got in arguments with her all the time, because even though I was a lifelong Democrat, I never pulled the lever. I never pushed that button. And I would get in arguments with my mother and say, it's an uninformed vote. You don't even know who you're voting for half the time. She was happy to not vote for any Republican. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's going to force people to think a little bit more about who they are voting for, and I think that's good on both sides. I think it's good for local elections, state level elections, and federal elections. There's going to be another question on the ballot as well. It's called Marcy's Law. This will be a question that you will answer yes or no to, and I'll just read it. And I have not had too much time to research this, and I'm not going to give an opinion one way or another on how. I don't even know how I'm going to vote yet, and of course I should never give an opinion on how you should vote. But I'm not even sure how I'm voting on this. But here's the wording of the ballot question. Shall the Pennsylvania Constitution be amended to grant certain rights to crime victims, including to be treated with fairness, respect, and dignity, considering their safety in bail proceedings, timely notice, and opportunity to take part in public proceedings, reasonable protection from the accused, right to refuse discovery requests made by the accused, restitution and return of property, proceedings free from delay, and to be informed of these rights so they can enforce them. So make sure you look into this question. Again, I'm not even sure how I'm voting on this. Honestly, with my rants and my talking about Larry Krasner and how he doesn't take victims' rights into consideration, you would think I would automatically be in favor of this law. But as I have researched a little more, there are some issues with the wording and the law of unintended consequences. Even though this is meant to protect victims, it in the end it might not actually do that. And there's also, I've seen some opinions that you're innocent until proven guilty. This might take away some rights of the accused and hurt their due process as they go through the judicial process. So, and it's interesting. This is one of those things too. Both Republicans and Democrats are both for and both against on both sides. So this really hasn't been, as I've read it with my friends, it's not a Republican issue or a Democratic issue. So make sure you read that. Again, as I remind you, almost every show, November 5th, get out there and vote. We'll see you next week, and don't forget to vote.